Hello and welcome to DM's Travel Book Club, a guide to the planes. In each episode, we explore one of the planes of existence as outlined in the Great Wheel cosmology in the role-playing game Dungeons and Dragons. Oh my god, we are back!
Yes, we are.
We're back for a sneaky couple of mini episodes. Mini, we say in quotation marks.
Exactly.
Yes, we're back.
We've never done a mini episode of anything, have we?
No, I know. Prepare for 2 hours of content. Hello, my name is Fiona. I'm one part of the DM's Travel Book Club. My co-host, as always, for this whole journey has been Hamilton.
Hey! Hello,
you.
Fiona. How are you doing?
Well, better for talking to you, because we've had quite a trip, let's say,
Yes.
through like all 16 planes. They said it couldn't be done, and
It has.
it has.
But it wasn't done well.
Oh, not at all. I
course.
thoroughly enjoyed it, and it's
No,
been nice to see
yeah.
people's reaction to it and how much they're
100%.
enjoying it. And yeah, I kind of like when we got to the end of it, I was kind of sad, going, "Oh God, now what? What are we going to do?" And then you were like, "There is,
Fiona, that's not
there's
the end.
loads. It's not.
There's
the
loads of planes. We have just done the outer ring. We are now, there's the Outlands, which is what we're going to be looking at today, potentially. There is Sigil, and there's all these inner planes, and there's the Astral Sea, and there's the Ethereal Plane, and the list goes on. And then there's different variations on the wheel cosmology. We could go to the Great Tree cosmology. We could go. We've then got the new ones for the 4th and 5th edition. I think it was 3rd edition, when there's the Feywild and the Shadowfell, and like.
Yeah.
And then and then we could do a whole Domains of Dread one. You know, we could go around them all.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or
And
you go
multiple
you start
primes.
start making our own domains of delight as well. That'd be-
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
yeah, so we thought, we'll come back and do a couple of these episodes, but where best to start? But then the Outlands. So yes, let's dive right in then. So Hamilton, what is the Outlands for those people who've just come on this journey and gone, wait,
Oh.
what? There's another plane?
So the Outlands is a part of the is basically, there's a great ring, as it's called. We call it the Great Ring cosmology at the beginning of every single one of these episodes. But then inside that ring there is a land, and that landmass is called the Outlands, or the Plane of Concordant Opposition. I had to check that.
Yes.
And it is actually the only true neutral plane, because there is no true neutral within this great ring. There is the chaos. There's the ultimate chaos of Limbo, and then you've got the ultimate law of Mechanis, and you've got the ultimate evil of the Grey Waste, and you've got the ultimate good of Mount Celestia, and then everything in between. But there's no ultimate neutrality, and that's what the plane of concordant opposition is, or as known as the Outlands. And that map will hopefully come up, and it looks like a cake. You talked about lots of things looking like cakes throughout this whole series.
I know.
So this actually does look like a cake, and out off this ring this cake drips off into the different planes via things known as gate towns, which we'll probably talk about. And in the center is a huge towering spire, and then atop that, floating in a Mobius disc, which is a donut that's been, if you imagine a donut that has been sort of scooped out, cut the circle, if you got the circle of a donut ring, and you cut those in half, made them like this, and then took that shape round, that is the object that hangs around the top of the spire, which is called Sigil.
Yes.
And that is it in a nutshell.
Yes. No, and I love that, the inside bit of a donut, whereas I would call it the inside bit of a tire, essentially.
Oh, well, yeah, that's a really good way of putting it, yeah.
Yeah, the analogy of that. But yes, it's such an interesting place, because straight off, and we've said this before about the planes of conflict, and all the ones that have more neutrality in them, they're not boring. And it says here quite significantly in this particular book, into this sort of like Sigil, the Outlands and Beyond book that comes with the Planescape setting. It talks about it's pure neutral, so nothing happens. Quite the contrary. Things happen. If anything, a lot of things happen, because as soon as you take one point of view, then somebody else goes, well, in order to restore the balance, I must take the other point of view. So there's constantly people taking different points of view, or having these sort of oppositions to each other. And so as a result, I feel like nothing gets done in a sense, because it's like, God, I have to talk to people all about this stuff. But it actually, no one's not involved, if you see what I mean. So it's described as the wildest, weirdest, or most hostile plane in the multiverse, and thus it makes a good campaign base to start off your Planescape things. And that's one thing I did want to say in this book in general, so a quick overview before we go into the Outlands. There, in this book, so I'm talking about Planescape setting book number 4, Sigil and Beyond. There's a whole bit at the beginning which talks about what is a Planescape setting, and how we would deal with it. And I think that for me it's been really interesting because I hadn't really thought about it. And it talks so much in this book about tone and what to expect and how to set that up, and like how would you do a Planescape setting. And it talks about like when you first start off, maybe they are in Sigil, which I know is not the focus of this episode, for early levels, and then slowly you go out, and then it's the Outlands, and that's when you're sort of mid-level, and then you go into the different planes. Whereas I know before we were sort of talking about you can go into certain levels and be in certain planes, etc. And I just thought it was just so good because it's just like, here's the structure, and you as a DM have so much agency. It's I think I just really appreciated it. Like, it was written in such a nice way for me to take it and just like, you don't know what a Planescape setting is? Here it is in the first 10 pages of this little book, and just take that and run with it.
And those headings are great as well, because there's the two that they stick with is the Sense of Wonder and the Golden Glory. Are the two titles they use for like what's the point for it. And the DM's book, the DM's Guide to the Planes, which is the book 2, I think book 1's the player's guide.
Yes.
In that pack, in that sort of in the campaign setting box set, it's they are really good, and it does really explain what the magic of this setting is. And I think we've explained what the planes are, and you're right, it doesn't really in those explain. I think you get it from reading them, is that this is extremes, and it's philosophical at its root always, and that's sort of the key sort of theme that runs through it all. But like what it is it's getting your characters to integrate with a really super fantastical world. And the sort of extreme side of the makeup of a fantasy realm. Like, it's kind of, you literally go behind the curtain of you go out of shot in Lord of the Rings. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of feels like that, and how it's actually all put together. And whoever was making it, which I think was Zeb Cook, and
I was going to say it must be a Zeb Cook book. Like,
which is the sort of key people, guy who wrote it, is that's sort of what they were obviously going for. This sort of like a really intelligent way of just going through the behind the curtain.
Yeah, and I'll just say as well, because this book, the Sigil and Beyond book that I was reading, so it's split into sort of 3 big sections. The Lay of the Land, which sort of does that whole setting up, like what is a Planescape campaign and helping out DMs. Then you have the features of the Outland, which is, I think, is one of our focuses on this episode. And then it talks about the doorway to Sigil and how that, that this is basically the capital, I would say, of the Outlands, and where that sort of comes into it. And then a few like little adventure hooks and more importantly, a bloody glossary. I could have done with that glossary.
Yeah, I know. Really useful. Really useful.
It is really good. I was like, God damn it! Book 4 is when we
that's
get the
where they put the glossary. Yeah, exactly. I know
it's fine.
Not.
It's my own fault for not reading it much sooner. But I was a bit like, because I obviously know all these terms now, like Burke and Sod and Leatherhead.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because obviously I'm just like reading it for going.
It is in the player's handbook as well. There is a little glossary of terms as well.
But as you can tell, I
haven't read it. No, because I haven't sent it. I haven't asked you to read it for this, so it's fair. But and that's the thing, and that is the great thing about Planescape. Why I love it is because you've just said it has all these themes, has all these other things, but like that glossary of terms and the fact that it has its own dialect is so. I don't know of any other. I can't think of another TTRPG. You would know more, so you might have a better answer that has its own sort of language system and sort of ways of talking and colloquialisms, I think, which is kind of fun.
Nothing that comes to the top of my head straight away like this. I'm sure obviously we definitely covered campaign settings, and definitely we spoke about other RPGs which will have a certain language like glossary. So like, for example, the big one instantly comes to my mind is like the Lord of the Rings, the One Ring, but that's obviously is Tolkien, right? So that's going to be all these different languages and stuff, whereas this feels like it has been written deliberately with this language. And it's something that, again, maybe slightly off topic, but it reminds me of improv quite a bit when we say, okay, this scene is going to be a sci-fi scene, and a lot of improvisers who go, I don't really know much about sci-fi, and it's like, it doesn't matter, you can make up anything, and as long as you're confident with the wording and you give a little definition to something. It's like, pass me the solar powered spanner, or something much better than that, for example. But like, as long as you're confident in naming things, then that makes it feels real. And that's the same thing with, because obviously at first I was like, it's a bit jarring, the Soddenberg stuff, but and the Clueless and all that sort of thing. But actually, obviously, the more I've read it through, you just get ingrained in that culture, because like, this is the language of the world it's in. The only RPG I can actually think of which is about language is a game called Dialect, where you, with a couple of people, collaborate on creating like a civilization that creates its own language, and then how it is lost to time and such to speak.
Cool.
It's very cool. I've not played it myself, but I was just reading through it the other day. So, but yeah, I think it's very unique to this, or it uses it more and more. Obviously, Planescape is so vast with all its different books and stuff, so maybe we're just more aware of it because it's just in lots of different books. So I don't know.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, well, it is great for it, and it really brings you in. And I think, and as you said, that it sort of leads you into the Outlands as a sort of starter guide. I think Sigil is we will talk about Sigil next, and I think you've got to leave that to its own thing, and it is
Agreed.
a great place to start a campaign. But it is extreme in itself, and is chaotic, and it has its own rules and peoples and factions and all this stuff, which we've talked about on other programs. But the thing that the Outlands does in a really good way is it's like a tasting menu for all of these elements. And I think going to Sigil is like when you take your characters to Waterdeep, it can be a little bit overwhelming, like this urban environment, and that's why you always start in these little host towns, don't you? I saw a really great meme of the little dominoes that go from little to big, and the little one is fetch quest, and the end is kill God. Every D&D campaign, because it's like you topple those dominoes. And the Outlands is good because it doesn't mean you have to deal with a lot of the things that, if you want your players are coming to Planescape, if you find you go to Sigil, you'll be like, okay, you need to choose a faction, you need to figure out what all these wards are, whilst you can start in the Outlands and it looks a bit like it's just like a forest, or it's just a rolling hills, or it's a bit desolate, or whatever it relates to wherever you're near. And then you can go to a very simple powers realm, which there are a few powers in this realm like there are in all other realms. It's similar to that, and sort of start off there, or a little host town that relates to something that maybe they know, like a god of gnomes, or just a village of petitioners that were lost, or something like that, or just set up camp of neutrality, and go from there. So it's a fun place.
And just to quickly, I know we've already covered factions in one of our earlier episodes and stuff, but I think that is something also to mention here. We do cover it a little bit in the Travel Book Club, we touch on it here and there and everything like that, but the thing about Planescape, it has this idea, obviously it's a sense of wonder, as you said, but also this idea that core concepts of beliefs, and that there are philosophies, and I quite like the enthusiasm of factions are philosophers with clubs, which I f***ing love as a concept. But that idea is that you're going to have people who are going against you because they have different agendas. It's not always the big bad that wants the most money, or I want to have power. It's all
my idea is the correct idea. It's very much and there is an additional rule that you can use in Planescape, which is using the belief system, which is that you give your players sort of inspiration and benefits and boons, and there are and they go in two different ways. One which is sort of just like an inspiration sort of thing, and sort of gaining of ability scores to a certain extent if you want to take it that far, or you give them benefits in game that relate to if they stick to their beliefs, whatever you set out their beliefs, and when they stray from those beliefs that they set out at the beginning, then either they can change their beliefs and you can take them down a new path, or you can go along these ways. But then also with these factions, when we come to them, when you join one, there are faction benefits, and they give you not only sort of benefits in you get access to things, you also gain sort of skills and abilities through them and stuff like that, which is kind of interesting.
And the other thing I just wanted to quickly mention, again, I know we're not really talking about Outlands, we're just talking about Planescape in general, but the feel of the setting, it talks about obviously you want to make it tangible stuff, but then it says that might mean you have to encourage players to role play more. And I was like, again, a silly moment, so to speak, but from when I've been reading these planes, I've been seeing them as there's lots of rules around them, and people are like this, that, and the other, but it clearly describes this is not about beating up gods and taking their job, or eliminating all the evil things in around. It's not a power trip. And you could, and that kind of, it was like a big sort of galaxy brain moment for me, because like obviously there's so much in these books and so much in all these different planes that you can take bits and pieces, but it's just like any story is valid, but you might need to encourage them to think outside the hit and stab box. And I was like, whoa, I'd never read that before in a book. I don't know, I made an assumption about older editions, but they're clearly like, hey guys, roleplay is important here too. So.
And no, and there are lots of, we've noticed it throughout the planes, these moments where they've explained ways to adjust your roleplay as well, such as the one that comes to mind is Arborea, where you've got to ham it up, when you're in Arborea, or that you might dull it down when you're in the Grey Wastes, because you lose your sense of life and sort of in bon vivant or whatever it is, that sort of like, and then so. And that your alignment changes, and alignment is so critical to it, so it puts focus on players to think about those things, because it is inherent in the setting. And then, as we said, like you're talking about the philosophies, when you give yourself these philosophies, they're really great when you look at the factions. I recommend people to do that, and you can find we'll probably get a link to it here somewhere, to our factions of Sigil. But like if you choose one of them, like for example the first one, the Athar in the list, which is they believe all gods are just mortals with power, like because they go like wizards, they can cast wish, they can do all these things. So basically they're demigods. So gods are just mortals with extreme amounts of power, and people believing in them that gives them power, which I think D&D sort of says is true. And so their theory is that all gods aren't real, and we should all just, and they think there is a higher power behind everything that gives them power. If you take that as a reality and you give that to a player as like, that is your belief system, that gives them something so tangible to sort of like
jump off point.
If you're then going around the planes, every time you're going to a realm of gods and stuff like that, that is on your mind and a part of your interaction with them, and to your party members. And so you might have a party member who's an anarchist, or someone who's a free league, which is similarly like anarchist, but I'm trying to think of another one that's a good one, like the governors, who are all about law and rules and finding those. And again, all these things just help to build a character more, that helps you then roleplay it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. So I guess let's go into the Outlands. Where should we start? Like, where would you start with the Outlands? Yeah, I know.
Where would I start? I'd start on because we've gone around the plains. I feel I'd go to the edges, which is the ringed edges of the gate towns in my mind, and then we'll talk about the other places in between. Does that feel sort of
perfect? Yeah, that makes sense to me. Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to? I've got a list here of all of them.
Yes, so, I also have those. Well, I want to point out very quickly that Hamilton, you helped me significantly.
Yes.
I was reading this through, and I will say sometimes in Planescape it comes to be long lists of stuff, and there's like, here are the gate towns, but also here's a realm in between, and I'm like, is that important? And so I was really struggling until you shared with me the player's primer to to Planescape, to the Outlands, which is a audio CD that's been put on YouTube. I'll make sure we'll have a link in it in the show notes, of a very well acted like audio drama, like presumably reading out a book of some sort. It feels very much, if you have
reads out the book, that you can buy the book, or you can get the audio version, which they should do so much more of. Yes, or we should just do for them.
Well, and that's the thing. So yes, so it is obviously a book. It's very much truncated, a bit of information about the different gate towns. So all 16 of them that it sort of describes, plus obviously the other realms as we're about to talk about. But also it does it in a way of like, here's Mimir, which is a very big, if you've played God of War recently, big character in that. But also
what,
this
Mimir
idea
is it?
Yeah, Mimir is like your helpful person that helps you, that just the head on your. You've not played God of War, it's fine.
I've not played God of War, that's why I'm like, they have one, because it's, if anyone played the Planescape Torment game, you had a Mimir following you around as a skull that talked to you the whole time.
How funny.
Yeah, so it's a key character, and also in the Cage, the Faces of Sigil book, Uncaged Faces of Sigil, that's it, sorry. That book is presented as loads of different people, and one of them you meet is Quirnog, and you meet her and her Mimir, but the way you meet them is her Mimir talking about her, and that's how they to another person, and then it turns out they're just about to kill them. That's kind of the story. It's kind of a really great way it explains what a Mimir is and stuff like that.
That's very cool. So there's some. Mimir is obviously, it's something in the Norse pantheon as well. Right. It's like the most intelligent man alive or something like that. I won't go into too much here because that's God of War, but essentially for this, it talks about obviously a Mimir sort of giving out a short guide to those people taking on the Outlands and the Planes, and it is just like about 40 tracks or so, each about the most is like just under 3 minutes for me, which is like perfect. And it just snatches of information of interviews of someone talking to camera in quotation marks, or literally like we don't have any information about this place because all of our agents have not come back from the Beholder's Lair, and it's got sound effects, it's done as if it's a really good audio drama, and it's like over 25 years old, and it sounds. I mean, I don't know if they must have cleaned it up the YouTube one I was listening to, but it sounds really good.
It was a CD.
It really engages. But it's 1995. It wouldn't surprise me if it wasn't.
I know. But it's digital. There were digital audio tools in those days.
Yeah,
but
true. But I highly recommend checking it out. Again, we'll put a link in the show notes. But it was just such a really nice, sort of shortened down guide, which was actually really entertaining, really well put together, well produced. And like you said, I really wish more stuff like that would happen, where we're going to do a quick audio guide to this, and it's literally short, sharp. You can listen to it in 2 hours. As you said to me off recording, but not one for bedtime listening, because it's a little bit...
it's got a very freaky voice, and it's kind of like people screaming in the background and stuff.
The limbo and pandemonium,
Well, the Mimir also exists in the mortuary in Sigil, famously. I think this one is the one from the Torment game, and that's probably where I think they got the actor who probably did that, I imagine, to probably do it. So, and that book is good as well. The book is only 32 pages long, so if you download it from DM's Guild, you get a copy of the CD audio files as well, I think, somewhere you can. So it's definitely worth getting.
So that definitely helped me put into sort of my brain space about all the different gate towns, because as with all the 16 planes as well, sometimes you're like, oh, they seem very similar, but they're not, obviously. So I guess that's I mean, maybe a very stupid question, Hamilton, but what is a gate town?
So a gate town is basically a plane's presence in a physical format, depending on which plane it is, sometimes not so physical. Limbo comes to mind, but there is a physical manifestation of each plane on the edge of the Outlands, and they are normally towns or villages that represent qualities of that town, of that plane. They are ruled and organized in a way that relates to those planes, and if they become too much in sync with their own plane, then they get absorbed by the plane itself, and a new gate town builds in its stead. And so that's famous ones that do fall more readily into their own gate town is the Abyss and the more chaotic planes, because the Abyss is always constantly trying to absorb more and more planes, and Limbo's too chaotic and stuff like that. But in order, like you said on the plane of neutrality, is a lot of these places have systems instilled in them which deplanify them, if that makes sense. So some ones that are chaotic may have some sort of lawful attitude to them, like a militia in the Abyss is plane, or in Automata, which is the plane, the gate town to Mechanis. It has both has a very structured and organized daytime council, and then it has a nighttime council of thieves and chaos that lives in this undercity that maintains its presence because it is so ordered above ground and in the daytime that this is the only way that it doesn't get sucked into Mechanis. And we see that before. We mentioned this in other planes, that planes do this, like Nemaustus from Arcadia, which, because it became too evil, it became too just purely lawful, and therefore switched from Arcadia into Mechanis. And so it's so that's kind of how they work, and each of them have a gateway portal of some description into the plane themselves. Hopefully that was a condensed version of what
it was. And you're right, it's like all 16 sort of towns, they sort of grow up around these portals, and they take on those aspects of it. And perfect examples of the Mechanis ones, or Automata, that idea of the different orders and stuff like that. And again, listening to that player's primer one, it does a really good job of getting that across in under 2 minutes, which I really love. And there's stuff here that we've covered a couple of them sort of on and off, I think, in our guide to the planes previously. Like, I definitely remember talking about Bedlam and what was the other one I saw? Plague Mort. Like Plague Mort and and Ribcage, it was, I think we were just about to say. I guess Ribcage makes more is I guess more in my memory because obviously everyone talks about the Nine Hells. We've got Descent into Avernus, all that sort of thing. So it's maybe a bit more at the head. But I'd not heard of some of these other ones like Ecstasy. For Elysium. What was the other one that I really
Cursed.
liked? Yeah, Cursed. What
Which
a great
is the
name.
Kasseri one. There's Excelsior.
Excelsior. I was gonna say with Cursed one. That's an interesting one. Again, all of these, I guess. Again, it's just ones that pick out of my mind. That one has this like 5 almost ringed sort of walls or sectors in this town. And again, very much like Kasseri being the prison plane, it's like it's very easy to get in, but it's very hard to get out because it's all about being embittered and you want to. You're hard done by the universe.
It's filled
waiting to get your revenge.
It's filled with people waiting to get their revenge. So they're the ones that like haven't quite passed into Kasseri, but they're here because Kasseri is where people are put. When they have been, like famously named after where they put the what were they called? The Titans. From in Greek mythology. And incarceration comes from that. And so that's where people are sort of jailed. But this one is where people live who will never go and get their revenge because they never will. But they will be sitting in their bile, basically, the whole time and just holding a grudge. And it's walled and cased in black razor vine, which is something that's a native to this part of the plane and to Sigil. And there are this happens lots of times, the little moments, and I only noticed a couple in this one, but the Lady of Pain does come up a lot in Planescape as like little hints and nods, and in more of the other Sigil books of where she comes from and what her relationship to, because she didn't actually create Sigil, and she sort of took it over. But the Razor Vine is also a new addition to the city, which has not always been there. It's never really mentioned, but it's always hinted. And then it also hints that she might have once been the ruler of Plaguemore. Yes, Plaguemore. Yeah, the ruler of the Abyss Gate Town. And then there's the other sense that it's only in Cursed that they have the Razor Vine, and she also creates mazes which remind you, and it says Kasseri reminds you and Cursed reminds you of the maze labyrinths that she creates to put people in. That's her sort of imprisonment. So there's definitely a relationship. And then also to the Bladelings, which we find in Pandemonium, I think. Oh my gosh, I can't remember. Or are they in Archeron?
Archeron. You can't throw something like that at me. I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to catch this one.
But there's all these little hints to her relationship to all these other planes at certain moments. And I think it's just kind of worth noting that. That was all.
No, absolutely. And also, it's some cracking names for gate towns. I know, I probably said this well, but I love that. Like, for example, the gate town to Hades, one of the last ones we sort of looked at, is just called Hopeless. And
it's a spiral of hopelessness as well into the center, where you then just fall into a well of hopelessness. I mean, it's so like on the nose, but it is great, and there's a quote in it that's in what you got, what do you got against, Grey Burke? It's sort of like, what's wrong with like going from a person called Thingol the Mocking, which is the High Cardinal of Hopeless. Like, I mean, just great names for things, isn't it? Really, I don't know.
Yeah. Again, so all of these gate towns, they're definitely I mean, it seems very obvious, but you start your campaign to the planes where in the gate town, giving you that taste, or even doing like a quick visit to places. Because we've kind of mentioned it a little bit, and I know we're going to talk about it properly in our Sigil one, but it's weirdly both the Outlands and Sigil are obviously very well connected, but the Sigil is obviously more about the town. But let's talk quickly about sort of the different portals you can get. Basically, you get permanent, temporary, and shifting. And obviously the permanent ones obviously are like the gate town ones, where they are always going to there are no images you can get in and out from that same portal. Temporary ones, you can use them like once or twice and then they'll disappear, etc. Best ones for the GM, are the shifting ones. It says like, don't be too evil about it, and you're like, oh, but I will be. This idea that you're gonna use these you get your gate keys or whatever, and you're using your thing and you don't know where you're gonna end up. And so I just think that's, again, any sort of campaign, you stumble into a portal and you don't know where you're going to end up. Again, it talks about this as the DM has final say over all these portal things. There's nothing the players can do. It's very interesting in that writing. It goes, yeah, sure, they can do a wish spell, but they're better off just saying, I wish to be on this plane, rather than I wish to find the portal. And even then, wishes are obviously tricky at the best of times. So I just thought that was really funny, because it's like, yep, the DM gets final say on all these portals, and using them to get some places.
It's way too complicated. There is a good opening gambit though, which is Doors to the Unknown is a good one of the top, I think, adventures to run like straight off the bat, or once you've got yourself a hang of your characters, have got a hang of Sigil, because it really integrates you into understanding what the portals are about those, because it uses 5 random portals that only appear at certain periods of time, and one of them has just started opening, and someone's gone missing down it, and so it's all like, and they all go to 5 different locations, and it gives you just a little bit of a taste of a lot of different places. And I think that's a really good adventure if you want to know more about portals and explain those to your players in a really engaging way. So that is a good one.
Where's that one then? So what's the name of that?
It's a 2e, Doors to the Unknown. It's just one of the, I can't remember which number it was. I do have the book here. Doors to the Unknown is just a 2e adventure. You can find it on DM's Guild. It's not too expensive, because I think it's quite a small book. It's quite a small adventure guide. 2626 is the name of the book, if anyone wanted to know.
Yeah, no, I think it's good, because because this is the thing, like with all these sort of the primers and all that stuff, there's always good adventure hooks there. And I think I think what I hadn't realised before I'd be like, oh yes, we'll be on the material plane, but then we'll get to Mechanis, then we'll get to Arborea, rather than like, what if you started in the multiverse? What if you started in the Outlands and stuff? So I'm very keen to be like, how, because I don't know. I've never ran a Planescape setting. This is my first proper introduction to it. Until obviously everyone's going to have access to it by the end of this year, so to speak. But I think it's really interesting, and so I'd love to know how people would do that without overwhelming the players, but also like I said, like it's that sort of. It talked about it in the Sigil book, or the Sigil part of this book, where it says like, it's not sci-fi. Don't introduce guns. Don't introduce this. It is the medieval flavour that just so happens this, and having to like think about constantly that the feel and the tone of the story you're telling. I haven't seen that previously in 5th edition books. Obviously, I know when you get the adventures and stuff, it's like, we're going to the Feywild and that's what this means. But like this whole setting, I don't know. I just was like, oh, it feels so different and so interesting as a result, but with the very clear tenets, because compared to before, it's like, oh yeah, it's in the multiverse, this sort of big vacuous like concept that Marvel is using, or Doctor Strange in the multi, that's how I see the multiverse, because that's how I've been introduced to it. Do you see what I mean? That sort of concept.
I think because when I ran one, and there will be probably links here if you want to watch it, I took my characters to, they were high level though, they started at level, no, they were at level 5, weren't they? So they weren't that, they were 50 right at the beginning, they lost, but they were level 5 to start off, and I took them to the Abyss. But the thing that I found with the Abyss that's kind of good, and with all of these, is you can just pick a realm, like pick a realm that you want to engage with, because you can there's so many out there. And find one that you think, Abyss is a great one, the Hells is a great one because people know them, but if you wanted to go for something like Mechanis or something like that, I think people are quite aware of. Nothing too, like, I think Pandemonium maybe, but Limbo's probably just too esoteric to go to straight away. Even that, the entry for that on the players one, is like, it's completely incomprehensible. Yeah, exactly, Just don't. It has emojis in it from the 90s, so like, there you go.
I know. That made me laugh so much when I was reading that. Yeah, I was like, that's pretty cool.
So I recommend that as a good way of like if you want to go down that route of you're in some peril, and Sigil is now the route, the only way home. Give Sigil this little thing in the future if they're not going to be from it. I quite like that way of doing it. Like, okay, the first thing you've got to do is get to Sigil and get safe. Because the whole point is, you can tell them, the planes are dangerous! The planes are all bloody dangerous! Get to safety, and then you can start a campaign from there. Instead of like, here's Sigil, here's everything, here's the whole thing. It's like, here's your town, your starting adventure, which is a realm. They've been all teleported by someone to this random realm somewhere, or something along those lines, and then take them to Sigil, and then go from there. I think is a fun way of doing it, personally. But do it how you like.
Oh, of course, yeah. As always, do it this way or not. That's sort of like our tagline. But obviously, there are other realms and other places other than the 16 sort of gate towns. I'll tell you straight off the bat what. Or actually, no, Hamilton. Which one do you think is my favourite one that's been sort of described, or one that you would think I enjoy?
Actually, my probably best is Ilsacines, which is the mind place. Because I know you too
the caverns
well.
of Thought. Yes, absolutely.
Exactly.
Yes. The Ilsacines, the god of the mind players realm. This idea that it's all caverns and stuff, and then there's a mindless drone. The further you go in, the more it echoes, and then eventually you just get taken over. I'm just like, yep, tick. Fiona, favourite place. They'll never go to it. It's my favourite place.
Well, you can end up in it so by accident. You know, if you're in the Dwarven Mountain, which is nearby, which is the realm of the neutral gods of the dwarves, you can end up so easily just wandering down and losing your mind, literally and figuratively, to this thing. But what I love about it is that, but there's a reason to get in the center. There is a reason to go there, which is if you want to know anything about anything, because they have access to all thought, that you can just, if you can get to the middle and survive all of the horrors and speak to this
elder brain,
you and convince them to give you the answer.
I don't know, that your chances are getting very, very
slim. It's very much, and also it says no one ever leaves there without being affected in some way by it. And it sounds so it's a really great set. It's really great.
It talks about that sort of realm effect, obviously this idea of the psionic waves, sort of the headaches, stuff like that. It's just called the brain burn condition, and I'm like, what a great name. I'm always feel like that's a really cool, someone's thought about that, this idea that it just hurts so much that it's burning your brain from the inside out. So yes, I would say that is my favourite realm, that I was like, I quite like this one. So I'll take that. I also quite liked the Court of Light. This idea of the free-faced queen of the, I'm going to say this wrong now, but it's the snakes, isn't it? The Nagas.
Naga, yeah.
And it's just, it's very interesting. The Nagas in general are super scary, I find. I was just like, oh, no thank you. But this condition that they have of we want they're trying to improve people, so they come here, your people will come here or go in and they go, we got to improve you in some way, we're going to make you better, and that scares me, because what if I'm perfectly happy the way I am? Oh no, I'm not my best self. Oh god.
It's very true. And it's the other thing that it has, I like about it is the wording it uses that all relates to these things, about improving. It says it's nested in the Court of Light's got 3 clear areas which are nested like stacking dolls, and then it's got the inside the loom, so it's all about making and creating, and I don't know, it's got really great it's a really fun little place. I can imagine that was one of the others. Another one I was thought you might have liked was Gethsemanids, because it's got beholders in it, really. And I thought that might have been a bit too obvious, but yes, I do love a good beholder. It doesson have a lot of information about it, because that's the funny joke about it.
People don't come back from there.
No.
I quite like that. And actually, you said it's this idea of the loom, and then the hall of tests again in the palace.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Yes.
No, because that's the thing. Because you go into it, and each of these rooms are all the fears and expectations of those who go there. So instantly, I'm like, okay, we're gonna have a big reflective episode, everyone.
Yeah.
You're a shit. You're a shit.
You're a shit. You're all shit. No, but the other great. I love how it's the test. One time could be to prove your might, and the other time might be to walk away from a fight you can't handle. And you don't know what the test is, and if you fail, you fail, and you can, and you won't, and it's really, you can really play with your players there, and I think that's it's a really great, it's a more interesting Palace of Judgment than the Palace of Judgment.
Yeah, no, I was a bit like, when I read this, it was no hate, no sympathy, only judgment, a place of waiting.
Yeah.
I was like, God, that sounds so so people will go, people who have passed on will go here to be reassigned various things, and there is so much paperwork. It feels very much like Marcanus in a way. There's all that talk about paperwork, etc. But here it's just processing.
It's what's his name? Say his name into a mirror and he appears, but not Candyman, the other one. Beetlejuice.
Okay. It's just like,
Beetlejuice. It's
I was like,
Beetlejuice when
Bloody
they're
Mary?
waiting with the
Yes,
their little
yes,
car. Yeah,
with the
you
little-
are
with their stickers.
1,572. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking Vogons and Douglas
Yeah.
Adams stuff, getting the administration stuff. Because it's, again, in that little entry in the primer, it just says like, oh, you filled in the form wrong, that's another 16 months of waiting. And you're just there going, what? But it doesn't surprise me. Someone
was
going through
that?
lots...
Oh, I heard a story the other day about in 40k that because 40k has the Imperium has this huge what's it called, the administratum, because it is so large and huge, people queue in queues to get to the front of the queue, and they have generations that wait in the queue. So it's so big that people are born and die in the queue. So they live in order just to
Miserable.
get something organized. That's what it states. And that
so
is
miserable making. Oh, I can't even... That sounds awful.
And imagine
Not
if
do
you
it.
get to the end and it's like, we're closed for the day. And you're like,
Oh,
16 generations.
I mean, but it doesn't... I mean, we're both British people. We know what it's like to queue.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking of, obviously, recently we had the Queen pass, and the people were queuing all the way down the Thames. People will say it's so important we have
I
to
find
do
it
that.
weird that other places don't queue though. How do you organise a line?
I think
You told me about a buffet once. You did tell me about your buffet.
Well, we don't talk about that buffet
We
incident.
don't talk about the buffet.
How
incident.
terrible.
So British of us.
I wonder. I would just wonder if that's because maybe the other places we're thinking of, they're much bigger, so they have cars, and so they queue in their cars instead. I don't know, but yeah, it's queuing to get into festivals, queuing for toilets, queuing, and you just think there's just
getting
not
into
enough.
Glastonbury. Oh my gosh, I remember doing that.
I mean, I remember Leeds and Reading Festival, and I'm just there going, never again. Fuck this.
Yeah. I might as well just climb the wall.
Watch it on TV.
It's more fun to go wait to see if I get caught by a police person than it is to wait in this damn queue.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So those are some of the realms.
Some of the realms.
Moving on.
And as you've said, there's not much in. There's some really. Sometimes there's lots of information. Sometimes there's very little. So obviously it leaves room for you as a DM to come up with your own realms. So there's definitely one. I think again can't remember it off the top of my head now, which just said it's a forgotten realm and no one's ever been able to find it. But if they do, this thing is there.
Well, I have a duty always to mention dragons, so I've got to mention the Mausoleum of Cronepsis. I also, again, there can be a link here to another game that I did. This is all, you can see I'm very Planescape heavy, is that I did a one-shot based in the Mausoleum of Cronepsis to get, because there's an ever-decaying black dragon that sits, which is also the brother of Io. And they are actually siblings. One of them is sort of Io, the sort of the two children of Ao, which is the originator of the universe. One, Cronepsis, deals in the creation of time, and Io dealing in the creation of everything else, basically.
Yeah.
And so, but they are sort of negatives to one another. And Cronepsis is an extremely powerful dragon because they are a deity dragon, because they hold in their huge crypt-like mausoleum is every single dragon and dragonborn's life force is expressed there as a ticking sand time. And it's kind of like so Dark Souls. It's like it's so cool. It's such a great, this whole city of more
Nexus.
city. Yeah, exactly. It's this city of ruined temples just filled with these hourglasses. And there are petitioners. It doesn't talk so much about it in this one, but I've read a bit more about it. But there are petitioners to Cult the Dragon, like people who go there and visit, but not many. And basically a dead town, but it's a great, cool setting. And if you want to see people in there, you can go find that. But it's a really cool place. I love it.
You know, I just literally looked down at my notes, and I said there was the hidden realm, or what there's like a realm that's hidden. It's just called the hidden realm. So
don't get too excited by it.
Don't get too, it's hidden, but no sort of things about it. But yeah, that mausoleum one is so interesting. I as soon as you said Dark Souls, I'm like, of course, Elden Ring, all that sort of thing.
So
you can really bring in that sort of. I hadn't even thought about that. Yeah. So some really, really interesting realms there that you can take inspiration from, change around and stuff. And I just thought, they're just really interesting. Those combined with the gate town, so you can have a lot of fun just hopping between them, and eventually getting to Sigil. Because we've not really mentioned it, but let's talk about the sort of geography of the Outlands. And within that ties into the magical conditions, I'd say, as well.
Yeah.
So this idea, like, again, I was not aware of this at all, and I love this idea that the further out you are from the center, the more access to magic you have. So the further you go in, magic is limited or reduced, or there's a buffer or something. So where you are right at the center, can't get to Sigil, by the way. You have to find a portal to get in there. But that's where it's nullified. All magic, everything like that, even deity powers don't have magic at the center.
Yeah.
So that's where you can go and negotiate and talk. And I thought that was such an interesting concept. The issue being in the sense of, like, to get there, you have to drop off at the nearest, like, ring, essentially, and then make your way in. So it could be days or weeks before you actually get to that center, which sounds like a slog, to be honest with you.
Really
But it's just,
does.
but it
great.
makes it makes me think of, like, literally, like, again, you think about, and the way I always go to the US, because obviously that's where I'm more familiar with, like, the Great Plains, just vastness, these bits of beauty, but just no.
But it does
cell
mention
service,
that.
no
That's what
nothing.
it says. It does mention it in that. It says it reminds you potentially of something that's known as the Large Plains, or something. It goes something of that name on the one of the Prime Worlds, and so that's what it sort of implies, that is the center, and that's where gods go to parley.
Yes.
Because they cannot, like, hurt one another in those places. And I love the little extra thing, the wizard walking castles, because wizards want to be only in a ring. So when you're a wizard that's only got 5th level spells, why would you want to exist anywhere when people can cast 6th level spells, because they'd be better than you? So you just stay, but then as you gain magical proficiency, you get your castle and walk it into the next ring. And if the ring shifts and changes, as it does, because powers grow and gate towns disappear off into the void, you need to be able to, oh crap, now there's someone coming after me, quickly get my wizard castle over the line back into the safety of the 4th or 5th ring, or wherever you are.
That's so funny. It reminds me very much of an RPG called Colossal, which is similar things. I think, did I send that to you? I can't remember. There's
Yes,
little
you did,
rooks
yeah.
and stuff. Yeah, similar sort of thing. Less that you're walking around in them, more that you're fighting those big, very much Elden Ring style monsters, but obviously
Exactly,
in a very cutesy way. But yeah, absolutely. I just love that idea that you look out and you just see a castle like, oh shit, and it walks back, it runs away from you. Fuck! It's a powerful wizard, run away!
It's so good.
But I guess compared to, like, previous planes, obviously, which had sort of blanket conditions, this is I know there's a couple of planes which have, like, depending on the town, perhaps, and depending on the deity's influence, then that changes certain powers and stuff. But here, the fact that it's all-encompassing, this idea of that, it is these onion layers that you slowly go in, and you don't know until you try, and then you go, shit, just like, fuck, I don't have it, get back.
It's very true, and it goes. That is up to the it shifts and change, and it's up to the DM where that is. So you can just spring it on your players as and when you so wish, what layer you think you're in. You can't really tell without actually trying, which is kind of fun.
But also, just again, as I mentioned to it, it's like, it's because Sigil is a separate to this. Spells do work there. It's just at this base of the spire and stuff like that. And as I said, like, you can't get to Sigil from the base. So you imagine you get all that way, you're like, sorry mate, you gotta go round. You gotta get a portal from one of the gate towns and get. And just like, what? Oh my god! Like, that's something that I would do. That's a sort of muck up that I would make. Going to somewhere, there's no trains to London. You gotta go via Reading or something.
For fuck's sake. Yeah, we've all been there.
Yeah, we've all been there. But then also, again, we've sort of not danced around it, but this idea of balance as well. This idea that you do something, you have to do something else to sort of retain that balance, because of the idea of neutrality. So this idea of, like, magic stuff. So, like, for example, divination magic. If you're trying to find out information, you have to reveal a secret of your own in order to
divine something new. Yeah, no, I really like that as a magical condition. It's really good.
And again, a great one for role play as well, because I just can imagine just going, oh shit, what haven't I said anything? What haven't I revealed? I don't know. I
ate the last of the cheese.
Yes, ask somebody else. And Oh, this is the other one I thought was really interesting. The elemental, like conjuring ones, whereby if you wanted to get a certain power out, you've got to do a different spell to get the actual one out. So, like, if you want fire, you're like, okay, water and then fire, and I just was like, oh my god, just the amount of stuff on that. But again, very cool, very flavoursome. I just thought it was really cool. There's elemental conjurings of that.
No, I really like it, and it just plays on that whole theme of as you said, with the making everything neutral, and we did say it at the beginning, but I think that that expounds, doesn't it, as you said, to the fact that, again, reminding people that people will inevitably want to readdress this balance. So if you do something that is overtly in one direction or another, or affecting a will in one way or the other on some place, someone out there is going to want to undo that effect. And so I think that's something really fun for GMs to take on board.
I was just about to say that whilst you obviously were fixing out you think, but one of my favourite things is that, you know, not every place on the plane can be mapped or named, such as Forest, darker than the last one we were in. That feels very much a Fiona naming convention.
I like that as well, though. It's kind of cool.
The next thing I wanted to talk about, following on from that idea of the spell keys and the magic and stuff, I just want to, because I haven't heard of this phrase before, and I know it's because I'm not as au fait with second edition and Planescape, but this idea of an energy plane and obviously a shadow plane. So it talks about, like, to get to the energy plane, it requires, like, the life or sort of the resurrection of a bug or a worm, and the energy one, the opposite, other way around, so the death of a bug to go to the energy plane, and then the life of a worm. So what is an energy plane? I don't know what that is, if you see.
I mentioned these off podcast. I was thinking, I did mention these to you recently, but I remember why.
I don't remember.
You don't remember that anyways. I think I talked about it because the inner planes are different again than they are in the current day setting. I don't know if they are the same. I can't remember off the top of the head. I think, but it's much more spherical, and so you have earth, wind, water, fire is your basic 4 elements. You then also have positive and negative energy planes, which are positive being sort of ultimate radiance and negative being ultimate necromancy and, like, the negation of things. And what you then have in that sort of sphere is you have the demi-planes of, like, between water and wind, for example, which is called mist, I think.
Fog or something.
Yeah, fog. And then but then if you take water and positive, you get mist, I think that might be it. And then water and negative, and you get, like, sludge or something. Ice, that's it, ice, yeah. And then
that's just me assuming.
And you get air. So when you get air and positive, it's lightning. And when you get air and negative, it's smoke or something, or smog or something like smoke. I can't. Yeah, and then you get fire, and I can't remember. But anyway, they all. I'd have to find them out. We will do these because they're also quite crazy. I did spring that on you, but I just thought to myself, I've heard you talk about it, but I don't remember. So that's what they are.
But I love that idea because, again, I know with 5th edition and going forward to D&D in general, that obviously we're, like, possibly smoothing down and getting rid of some things. Like, I don't think energy plane or surely the shadow plane is obviously
that's
the
thing,
fells,
because
right?
the shadow plane was a subsection of the negative energy plane. Now what happened in D&D is that the negative energy plane in the spell plague, I think it was, split off from the positive energy plane, and the positive energy plane as well, all sort of merged weirdly with the realm of reality to create the Feywild and the Shadowfell. And there was some other plane as well that merged with them, I can't remember what it was, that sort of all whipped up and created these mirrors of the reality that we live in, and there was no longer a positive energy plane or a negative energy plane as such. They just sort of spread out into the multiverse and created their own. It sort of became one with everything else, and I think that's what it is.
Very cool.
Is someone do some checks?
Again, like I said, I
wasn't ready for that.
Sorry, I know, I'm like, but yeah, again, I know it's something that we're gonna go into anyway. I just thought that was really interesting because, again, I hadn't considered it, and that idea of positivity and negativity, again, that feels very much my vibe and doing stuff with that. So I just thought, that sounds really cool, and I'd like to do stuff on that. So
I think we should definitely go to the inner planes. They are weirder and crazier. I've only read them in the DM's
5th edition.
No, in the DM's guide to the planes that comes with Planescape does go into each of them and talks about them to a certain extent, and there are some crazy exciting things to do in all of them. And there are the negative energy plane. I think the only people that are there are the the Bleak Cabal, I think, are there
Yes,
because they
I
just
think so.
like to be moody and hang out there, and they've like created their own realm within there that can just exist momentarily, and then it sort of starts to decay and they have to build new ones. But it's kind of, there's some really cool places, and there are deities in these as well. So yeah, I think worth a trip.
Definitely. And I guess the final thing is sort of, I was going to say, in terms of like petitioners as well. Obviously, we've talked about how there's no such thing as a neutral petitioner because they're always going to like have an opinion or get involved in some way. But also this idea that the powers, the deities can sort of come and go in the Outlands. You can't get into Sigil, which again we'll come into when we talk about that. But like you could literally go up and meet a deity, or they appear. They're not removed. They're not like some sort of concept unless they wish to be.
No,
they could be literally walking down the street and you bump into them, and it's almost like celebrity sighting, isn't it? Like in London, you're like, oh my god, I saw Ben Whishaw in a Pret.
Did you?
Yes, I did. That's my own. That's my only thing to. That's my only one to claim. I've not everyone else I've seen on the stage, and that's it.
Oh really? Yeah. I think the one that I've done in London that I always remember. I've met a few. Just randomly, but in my adult life was Jarvis Cocker at a traffic light.
Oh, that's very cool.
There you go.
Were you next to him, like walking?
Yeah,
or
and we were going. I was with about 8 people going on our small team's Christmas do, and we all were talking like, should we invite him? And he then walked away and didn't wait for the light.
Oh no!
He didn't even want to wait for the light because he obviously heard us talking. Went,
oh no!
Fuck these weirdos! I'm going.
Oh, no! Oh, gutted. That's absolutely gutted.
So I was like, I should fucking ask him because what's the harm? Like, what? Come for a dinner with us?
Yeah, and he goes, no.
That's it. But still. But if he says yes, then what?
Oh, very cool. But I guess on top of that, with the sort of going back round to the petitioner stuff, obviously there's that sort of talk back and forth stuff. But obviously, don't ask too much of folks. Similar, we talked about that balance stuff. Is that they're like, oh, you have to pay back that balance in some way, like. So I love this little line it talks about. So suddenly, like a petition might come up to you and offer you some advice, or give out, or cut prices in a market store without any explanation, and that's because they're trying to balance it out somewhere. I just thought that's really cool. But then it talks about this idea of like, is the price worth the risk of something? Because obviously you might pay them for their services to take you somewhere, but then they suddenly might just go, I'm done now. I have to go back and redress the balance in some way. And I just thought that's such a cool little moment that again for your NPCs you'll have to have that in the back of your mind that they just suddenly might just go, and enough of this, and just, I don't like you anymore, because they're having to redress that balance. Just so interesting.
There is interesting in the book thing as well, which says about like, don't rely too heavily on these petitioners, because your players could become like too overly invested or too like leaning too heavily on them, and so use this waywardness to offset that balance and sort of keep them away from them as much. And it was kind of really interesting, sort of just as someone who overdoes NPCs, it's a really important thing.
We're both NPC club, aren't we? Like we create a character and then you're like, they'll never be seen again, and then they're brought along for the ride. And
exactly.
So this is perfect. I think I'd use this in general, just like I've had enough of you. Why?
Off.
Don't worry. Off. Bye. I'm going on the Concordant Express. You know, that sort of thing.
I'm so glad that exists now.
I know. I love that idea.
That now exists, literally must do in all Planescape. It's the best thing.
So. Yeah. So we'd obviously again might not have come to this just yet, but we've got the Keys to the Golden Vault.
Yeah.
That is in. It appears in one of the missions.
It does.
So I highly recommend checking that out because Concordant Express, going through the different planes and then obviously through the Outlands as well. Very, very cool.
All very cool.
Anything else you want to ask about or talk about in the Outlands?
I think that the book that we talked about in the audio CD and the YouTube link there is pretty much what you need to do if you want to get into depth on all of those different gate towns. So we haven't really gone into them exactly into their politics as much as we have in other places. I think the other realms, there's the Celtic realms of Turnintagog.
I was going to attempt.
But there's the Celtic realms which are interesting as well to investigate, but not. You know, I don't think there's anything in the Outlands that we haven't mentioned that is extremely like we need to talk about. I think the other thing to remember and to remind people is like this is your place to make your own as well. And I think the gate towns are your really key critical things, and I really recommend listening to that thing, or maybe or getting a hold of the book and having a look through them. But yeah. That's that. I don't really have anything else to say other than go and have a lot of fun in the Outlands, and I look forward to talking about Sigil.
Yeah, well, exactly. No, that's the thing. I think we've kind of hit home, like, yeah, because I didn't necessarily want to go into every single 16 towns worth, because unless you're going, right, Planescape, we're going through every single plane.
Yeah.
It's a lot of information, whereas you should pick the gates that all the planes that interest you, and then look at those gate towns. And obviously, they're greatly named. They've, like you said, they're a beautiful taster into what the possibilities there could be. And yeah, I honestly that audio completely changed my life.
Yes,
which
exactly.
I know sounds very dramatic and very sort of like, what's she on about? But honestly, it's turned me around to be like, oh, audio CDs of like soundscapes and discussions like that, when it's not somebody reading out the stuff as beautiful.
As a directed audio experience. Yeah, I'm totally. I mean, Fiona.
Yeah.
What do you want to do?
We're gonna have to set up a whole studio though.
Yeah, and we're gonna have to do this whole. We're gonna have to
get
like,
Taylor, Chloe, get them all in. You know, all our friends.
The uncaged faces of Sigil. I would love to do that, because that one has a lot of like scripted elements in it, and you could use that to create the faces of Sigil. But it's or doing if you do the guide to Sigil as a tout. Maybe we'll do that. I don't know if we got the time.
And we do not have time. But
we can just improv it, right?
Yes, that's exactly what we're doing. But yes, but where next, Hamilton? What's our next stop on our continued journey of the Travel Book Club?
We're gonna go. We've gone from the outside to the center to the middle to now to the center, and we're gonna go up the top of the spire and into the donut/tire that is the cage. As it's known, Sigil, the Lady of Pain's domain that she rules, with incredible different creatures such as Dabus, which are new to the setting, which look very much like the Grinch. If you've ever seen that,
I thought so. I was like, I'm sure I've heard of these creatures.
They look like the Grinch. They're really interesting. They speak in I've forgotten the name of it. Rebuses, which is a language of pictorial language. So when you see like boat minus T, so it means bow, and so it's like a picture of a boat minus a T, and then it'd be like a wheel, but like we, and then it'll have a wheel apostrophe, so it means we all, for example, or something like that, like a wheel halfway through, so it's like bow wheel or something like that. Anyway, it's very crazy. They're very cool. It's got wards, it's got links, it's the City of Doors, it's got access to all of the planes. It has everything. It's amazing.
It's very cool. I'm really looking forward to it, because again, this is my first time reading it. It's the first time I've actually read about the Lady of Pain. I've only ever gone off what you've told me about her.
She's fucking cool.
She's pretty fucking cool.
You do not mess with her, because she has killed literal gods to get where she is.
It is basically, in my head, she is Hellraiser. She's like, we will tear your soul apart.
Yeah,
she's so badass, and
she literally has Asmodeus weak at the knees, because she is more powerful than anyone. Is she the ruler of the universe?
Clickbait. I guess, yes, probably from your point of view. But yes, well, until next time, folks, thank you so much for joining us. We are here. We have done 16 planes. If you enjoyed this and gone, what are the other planes they're talking about? So please go check them out. They're available both on YouTube and on our podcast. We've also got our sibling show, the DM's Book Club, which is just a sort of general. You want to talk about some D&D? We talk about some D&D. Talk about topics as small as like stat blocks, all the way up to like big campaign settings. And of course, we have to plug our other show, the GM's Book Club. If you're like, we don't do any D&D, we just want role-playing games. I mean, we've talked about The One Ring, we've talked about Blade Runner. It's a great time in role-playing games, so go check those shows out. You can literally everywhere.
Planescape doesn't actually need to be in D&D. You could take all of these planes, and the fact that it relates to all Prime Material worlds, this could just be somewhere you take any of your players, from Pathfinder, 100%. From anywhere, I think. I see why not.
Agree. Yeah, why not? Why not? Yeah, you create your own stuff, essentially, and then use the Planescape stuff. But until next time, folks, thank you so much, and we'll see you on the flip side.
On flip side of the donut/tire. Bye!
See you in Sigil.
See you in Sigil.